Hello and welcome back everyone. Today I'm covering part 2 of the Gibbering Hordes' breakdown. If you're interested in learning about their commanders, titan, and solo unit, those are found in part 1. Today we're covering their squads, stratagems, and how to start playing as them. Remember that all of their squads can be summoned back in every turn with endless numbers, so generally their defensive AVs are awful, but losing a unit isn't the worst thing in the world for you. The cheapest of their squads, and the cheapest squad in the game, is the Egg Clutch. It really bends the term squad to the breaking point, as it's just one 40mm fire team with a single model on it for 2 scrip. Its normal and glory sides of their cards are almost completely different from each other. Normally, they have literally no speed AV, awful defense and armor, but one of the best willpowers in the game, oddly enough. In glory, their willpower crashes, but they get a decent speed instead. The first of their abilities is Just Some Eggs, letting them be deployed or summoned from endless numbers anywhere on the board, even in the enemy's deployment zone. Their second ability, which is the only part present on both sides of their card, is Nom Nom Nom. This lets you mill 2 cards from your deck when they're eaten for survival of the fittest, and if either card is a ram, then the unit who ate them gets a reinforcement token. Their normal side's morale action is Hatch, which just flips them to glory and ends their activation. When they do get to glory, they get a new ability and 2 new actions. The ability, Hatched and Hungry, makes them immune to flipping out of glory. There's no going back into the egg. The melee action is Tiny Claws, which has a poor AV and terrible strength. It really exists just to give them an engagement range and a chance of doing some damage. Lastly, their morale action is High-Pitched Wailing. This has a solid range and makes a friendly fire team move towards them. But if they end the movement with the Egg Clutch in their engagement range, then the Egg Clutch is immediately killed. Remember that all movement towards objects like this are always straight lines from center of object to center of object, so with some careful planning, you can make sure that they can't end in range to eat your Egg Clutch. Also remember that if you're targeting a squad, then its squad mates get to move half that distance and have to end in cohesion. The first of the Horde's more squad-like squads is their ranged attackers, the Barbed Crawlers. Coming in at 4 scrip for 3 100mm fire teams with 3 models each, these Grumpy Toads' defensive AVs are horrendous, but speed 6 is nice. Their only ability is Highly Toxic, which lets them discard a card when they attack to gain piercing, giving them much better odds of doing big damage. However, you have to choose whether you're doing this when you declare the action, so it's a gamble on whether you think you'll be able to actually hit for the big damage. That's especially a gamble if you want to use it in melee, as their melee action Toothy Maws has a truly awful AV and strength. They're quite a bit better at range though. Their missile action, Launch Barbs, has only so-so AV and strength, but decent range and it always gives a pin token on hit. This has the trigger Creeping In to move a nearby friend towards the target, even if the friend can't see the target. In Glory, this also gets 2 absolutely fantastic triggers. Fast-acting Toxins flips the target out of glory, which is a stunningly powerful effect in such cheap little guys. The other, Extra Toxins, lets you draw a card. The second type of crawlers are your support unit, the Speckled Crawlers. Like their barbed cousins, they cost 4 scrip, but these get 2 100mm fire teams with 5 models each. Their speed is okay, but their defensive AVs are awful again. Most importantly though, they have a massive Reserves 3, letting them bring back 5 models every time they reinforce. They have a ton of abilities too. The first of these is Skulking in the Underbrush, which makes them treat any difficult terrain like concealing instead. Their second ability is shared by their barbed cousins, Highly Toxic, which again lets you discard a card when they declare an action to gain piercing. While they don't have any missile actions, their melee action Clawing Arms has a decent to good AV and strength, and gets +1 strength if the target's touching terrain. AV 6 in Glory means that spending that card for Highly Toxic is a lot more likely to be valuable to you. Plus, Strength 3 for units that cheap is really decent, assuming they survive being that close to the enemy. In Glory, they get 2 new abilities, and these are what turn them into a support unit. The first of these is Endless, giving themselves 2 reinforcement tokens every time they activate. The second, a Tasty Snack, lets nearby friends remove a reinforcement token from these crawlers to gain one themselves. All of your other units love having these guys nearby to grab reinforcement tokens off of. The Horde's mobile unit is the Yarazi. They cost 6 scrip for 3 80mm fire teams with 3 models each. Their speed is fantastic, but their defensive AVs are awful again. Their first ability, Glide, helps them get around the map by letting them ignore non-titans and low terrain while they move. Their second ability, Swift Retreat, gives the unit free movement whenever one of their fire teams is killed by an action. Since it specifically has to be from an action, things like hazardous terrain or survival of the fittest don't trigger this. Their melee action is Diving Pounce. This is a so-so AV and strength normally, but it goes up to a great strength 4 on the rush order. In Glory, it also gets a trigger to gain piercing, but only if at least 2 of this unit's fire teams are engaging the target. Between Glide and this, they're actually really quite scary units for your enemy's backline, as they can move 22 inches, ignoring most things, and then slam the enemy with strength 4 attacks. When they get to Glory, they get the ability Buzzing Sound. This gives them a free 6-inch move when they take the Focused Effort order. It's nice to have as an option, or to get out of bad engagement without getting hit for it. They also get a missile action, Spit Mucus. This is a good AV, but is against speed unusually, and has a fairly short 8-inch range. It removes one of your target's tokens, and then gives them a pin token. This is great for shutting down your opponent's attempts to reinforce. Going up to 7 script, we find the Hordes' defensive unit, the Armored Whelks. These come in with 2 120mm fire teams with 3 models each, and have good to great AVs. Remember that if you take Kawatora with the Envoys from Kimon, you can summon these guys in. Their first ability is Independent, which has 2 huge benefits. First, they don't have to stay in cohesion, which lets them spread out, and second, it makes them completely immune from gaining pin tokens. Their next ability is Mobile Shield, which spreads their immunity from gaining pin tokens to all their nearby units. Against the King's Empire in particular, this is amazing defensive tech, and basically guarantees your reinforcement tokens are safe. The Whelks are solid in a fight, too. Their melee action, Heavy Claws, has a good AV and an excellent Strength 4. It also has a trigger to attack again, which really helps make up for the fact that there's only 2 fire teams in the unit. Going to Glory gives them a new ability and action. The ability, Massive Shell, prevents actions that target them from benefiting from piercing or the powerful attack trigger. Combined with their armor 10, this makes them very difficult for your opponent to fully kill. Lastly, they get the missile action, Spit Mucus. This action is a bit of a Frankenstein's monster, in that it's the same as the Yarazi's action, but the Whelks' version has a better AV by 2, and comes with 2 triggers also found on the Barbed Crawlers' launch barbs. Those triggers are fast-acting toxins to flip the target out of Glory, and creeping in to move another nearby friend towards the target. This action is great for providing support without leaving a good defensive position. Overall, this unit is a strong choice for back or frontline support, and your units love being near them. The Hordes' other 7-script unit is the Striped Skulkers, whose job is harassing the enemy's backlines. They get 3 100mm fire teams with 3 models each, and have decent speed and defense, but awful willpower and armor. Their first ability really helps with that, though. Adaptive Camouflage lets them flip 2 cards and choose which one to use for all opposed duels that they're in, as long as their fire team is touching terrain. Remember that penetration flips are not duels, so it does not help out with those. They also have These Things Are Everywhere, which lets them come back with endless numbers anywhere on the board that's not the enemy's deployment zone, but they don't get the free movement if they do this. This lets you come back touching terrain, or suddenly appear engaging the enemy's gun lines to really mess with their plans. This means that you really don't mind when they get killed, since you can summon in a replacement right into the perfect position again next turn. Their melee action, Sharp Teeth, only has okay AV, but a solid Strength 3. Remember that you can flip 2 cards for this if you're touching terrain, so it's a lot more likely to hit than it sounds. They also get a trigger to gain Piercing, which becomes built in when they're in Glory. It also has a Glory-only trigger to attack again. When they get to Glory, they get a new ability and action. The ability, Ambush, prevents the enemy from cheating against your melee actions if the enemy is touching terrain. Lastly, they get the morale action, Fade into Surroundings. Note that this is not an opposed duel, so Adaptive Camouflage does not work on this. This lets your fire team teleport anywhere on the board, but if there are multiple fire teams alive still, then your landing spot still has to be in cohesion. It also has a built-in trigger to kill the acting fire team and gain a reinforcement token. But why would you kill one of your own fire teams? Well, picture this. You have 2 fire teams left and an enemy you really want to disrupt. You can have them both take Fade into Surroundings, with the first one declaring the trigger. This kills the first one, giving you a reinforcement token, and frees the second one from worrying about staying cohesion, teleporting right over to the enemy. The Hordes' last squad are the Karkinoi, who are their jack-of-all-trades units. 8-script gives you 3 100mm fire teams with 3 models each, and they have poor to decent AVs. Their only ability is really strong. Hunger gives +1 AVs on all of their actions per reinforcement token on them, to a max of 3. It's only on their actions, so it doesn't help defensively, but it makes them very likely to hit if properly supported. Their melee action, Scything Claws, has a decent AV in Strength 3, which goes up to 4 if they have any reinforcement tokens. With 3 reinforcement tokens on them, this is AV 8 and Strength 4, which is fantastic. It also has a trigger to gain a reinforcement token, and 2 more in Glory to gain Piercing, or to spend a reinforcement token to attack again. They also have some nice company support. Their morale action, the Spawning, lets you summon in an Egg Clutch, giving you more things to eat to flip to Glory, or just to get more activations. In Glory, this gets a trigger to summon in a second Egg Clutch too. Going to Glory gives them access to one more action, the magic action Regenerating Segments, which just lets them reinforce. Remember, you need to have a reinforcement token to discard for this to happen. It also has a trigger to let a fire team that's brought back immediately attack. The Hordes has one of the most unusual adjuncts in the game for 2 reasons. First, it can only go on fire teams with 40mm models, which is only the Barbed Crawlers, Striped Skulkers, and Karkinoi. Second, instead of bringing in a unique ability in action, they just let the fire team they're within borrow any action that doesn't summon that's on one of your living non-commander's squad's cards. This encourages you to bring a good variety of units with you, and means that you can use a different action with them each activation for great flexibility. This makes this adjunct excellent on the Striped Skulkers and the Karkinoi especially, as it lets you pair other squads' actions with their strong passive AV boosts. In my opinion, the standout actions to borrow are the Egg Clutch's Hatch, Barbed Crawlers' Launch Barbs, Armored Whelks' Heavy Claws, Striped Skulkers' Fade into Surroundings, and the Karkinoi's Regenerating Segments. One important thing to note is that you really want any units you attach Morphling to stay alive. Remember that when a squad is summoned back with endless numbers, it's a brand new squad of the same type that's summoned in, so any adjuncts like the Morphling do not come back onto it. With that done, we're on to the Stratagem Lightning Round. Altar of the Deep lets you kill one of your squads to gain a Tactics token for every 2 living models that was in it, rounding up. Since it costs 2 Tactics tokens to use, the squad needs to have at least 5 models alive on it to get anything out of this. The most you can possibly get is with a full health Speckled Crawlers unit with the icon of the first world attached, 11 models giving you 6 Tactics tokens, though I don't recommend doing that since the icon of the first world does not come back from this. Cut them off lets the unit you activate after using this remove a reinforcement token from an enemy it's engaging to use Survival of the Fittest, instead of eating a friendly fire team. This is good for situations like summoning in Speckled Crawlers from endless numbers, letting them get right back to glory and also mess with the enemy's resources. Feeding Frenzy gives all of your units an Inspired token, and lets them immediately reinforce if they have a reinforcement token on them. Heavy Rains lets you create a tide pool anywhere on the board that isn't touching an enemy fire team, or in their deployment zone. This goes back to your deck after using it too. Onslaught lets one of your non-commander squads immediately take the rush order, in addition to their normal activation. You can choose to use this on any unit, not just the one that you're activating either. Spawning Moon lets you kill an Egg Clutch and summon in one of the Hordes' non-commander squads. This has a variable cost, needing 1 Tactics token to buy it, and half of the squad's cost in Tactics tokens to use, costing 3 total for either of the Crawlers, and going up to 5 for Karkinoi. Squall just gives every enemy unit a pin token. Thunderstorm lets you take the magic action Lightning Strike against any enemy on the board. This has good AV and a decent strength too, which goes up to 4 if they're touching a tide pool. It also has a trigger to make the enemy move a short distance too. After using this, you can discard a card to keep the stratagem, but you can only use it once per turn. So that's everything in the Allegiance. If you're feeling hungry for the Hordes, the best way to start is with their Allegiance box. This gives you the Storm Siren, a unit of Karkinoi, and 2 units of Striped Skulkers. This gives you enough for a 1-commander list when you stick on some assets, like the quick list on screen now. The fastest way to get up to a 2-commander game is to also grab the Starter Box, which gives you Kirai and Akirio, and a unit each of Enslaved Spirits and Gwaisin. I also suggest a unit of Armored Whelks to fill in script and get more of a long-lasting unit on the board. With these 3 boxes, you can make this quick list on screen now. If you prefer to stick to only Hordes units, you can do so with a handful of other boxes. I've put up a quick list on screen now that has a good mix of defense, offense, and speed. For this, you need to get the Frenzy, Armored Whelks, a Devouring Eel, Speckled Crawlers, Yarazi, and a Morphling. However, you should always take an Envoy just to have more hiring options. The Hordes have 3 Envoys they can take currently, 2 allies and 1 syndicate. Their allies are the Cult and Kimon, and the syndicate is the Court. Remember that allies require that you bring their dual allegiance commanders and let you hire their squads only, while syndicate's commanders are optional and you can take anything from them. For the Cult squads, in my opinion the standout option is the Doomseekers. They give you a good missile action with area, can summon in Breachlings, and can teleport your units around. Their next best option is the ECB Black Ops, for their extremely high strength missile action. Stalking portals are in an odd spot. Unlike the Allegiance card, the Cult's Envoy card does not let you place portal markers, so if you want to teleport your Cult units around, you need to hire these in. But if you want to spread them around the map, even though there are only 3 script per unit, getting a bunch can eat up your script fast. Twisted Horrors have decent melee and missile actions, but they're at their best when you're milling your deck, which might not happen much here. The Broken I think are a hard sell, since they're mostly commander bodyguards, but the Hordes is already full of expendable units. I think the Warped are an even harder sell on the Hordes, since they're a fragile melee unit in a company full of them, and unlike the Hordes, they don't come back with endless numbers. Plus, they really want portal markers around, and unless you're spamming stalking portals, that's just not happening. Kimon have a lot in common with the Hordes, in that they're both full of relatively fragile, melee-centric units. But if you're planning on summoning with Kawatora, you want at least 2 or 3, including himself. I think the easiest hire into the Hordes are the Nyan, for the free movement they give out with their aura. Oni Brutes are another strong option, since they can give you tactics tokens when they kill things. Plus your enemy can't use Shaken tokens against them, which makes them a good pick against the Cult. The Possessed are a really strange unit, but their free card draw and enemy disruption can be helpful. Yamabiko can help shut down enemy support against their targets, but otherwise are a melee unit in an allegiance full of them. Penitents have the same issue as the Broken, in that they're a bodyguard unit and the Hordes of all allegiances just isn't looking for more of those. Plus their ability to auto-reinforce summoned units only works on Kimon ones, and Papa Akaname does not benefit there. Keelan are fast, so you could take them instead of the Yarazi, but I'm not convinced that you don't want the option to bring the Yarazi back with endless numbers more. The Court are in a really interesting spot, in that they don't give a ton to the Hordes, but the Court loves what the Hordes gives to them, which is tons of things dying. Kirai can summon in units for days when she's hired in here, making her a very easy sell as one of your commanders. Bin is really strong here too, both for his tactics value and his ability to pulse out damage to all nearby enemies. The Gwyson give the really valuable ability Revenge, but their major weakness is Area, which is the same weakness as the Hordes in general, so your opponent is really likely to be bringing some already. Yaksha help turn chunks of the board into hazardous terrain, which, combined with Storm Siren, can turn the board into a real nightmare for your opponent. However, if they're expecting the Storm Siren, your opponent may already be bringing some anti-hazardous tech. Enslaved Spirits do have a missile action, even if it's a low AV, but otherwise are again a case of a bodyguard unit when you just don't need one. And with that, we're done with the Gibbering Hordes. They're a really strange one overall, but a lot of fun. Next time, I'll be going back to an Earthside allegiance with Abyssinia. Until then, happy gaming!